What are the beliefs, values, identities, emotions that I need to live in now so that I would automatically take that action as a byproduct and therefore create the results and have the goals and dreams that I'm looking for. And so what we do is we take a look at where people are at and we help them, call it install, the beliefs, values, identities, and emotional states that will yield the results that they're really after.
Welcome to another episode of You Must Be Out of Your Mind, and I'm Dr. Don Wood, your host. And as you know, I always bring on amazing guests that have great insights in other areas to sort of help us learn more. So this is a great learning exercise. And today I have Brad Bizjack, who is a high-performance mindset success coach, and I want to talk to him about what he's doing to help people. So Brad, welcome to You Must Be Out of Your Mind.
Well, I must be out of my mind to be here, Don.
Have to be out of your mind to have got on this podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to serve your audience. It's going to be a great episode.
Absolutely. So Brad, you and I met each other, and then you actually went through the TIPP program, in January of this year?
Yeah, that's right, back in late January.
So maybe share what your experience is and maybe what you were doing before and sort of what it's done for you after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in the mindset and success space for a decade, or longer than that, almost going on 13 years. And I've been studying books, personal development, all of those things, and I've trained thousands and thousands of people in this space. But even after all of that training and years and years and years of work and going to conferences and, being in the front row at the next best technology and all these things, there was still this sensation I had of an anxiety that wouldn't stop. And sometimes I could quiet it down a little bit. I could use breathing tools and things like that to calm it down. But I always noticed that it was reactive to that coming up. It was almost an after effect of, okay, the anxiety is here. I have to calm it down. There's 800 million moving parts in the business. And I really struggled with being present with the people that I love. And it was one of those things where even though I knew I should be, I knew I should be present playing with my daughter, but my mind was downstairs in the office focusing on the next launch coming up. And I couldn't, for some reason, I wasn't there. And one day, I had this experience where we had achieved incredible things in our business. We had, got our dream home, all this stuff. And one day, maybe a year or so ago, I was out on a jet ski and I found myself pissed off on a jet ski.
That's not easy. You have to work at that.
And I had this moment. I just stopped the jet ski out in the middle of the lake and I was just like, something's going on here, man. We got to change something. Who's pissed off on a jet ski? And so I had trouble sleeping. My mind would always have racing thoughts. And I just thought it was part of owning a business. I thought it was, I'm a high performer. I got all this stuff going on. But it was like, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get my mind to calm down. And I would have to literally go through a ton of different processes, for hours, just to chill myself out a little bit and actually be present. Well, I have a business mentor that I have been following for, 5-6 years, and I'm in his masterminds and all of that stuff, named James Wedmore. And I was at his conference and I heard you speak, and you talked about something really powerful that I've never heard before. And it was that anxiety is a symptom, not the actual problem. And for the first time, I just found clarity on that's why all of these techniques and processes that I've been trying have been working, because I've seen anxiety as the problem. I've seen this frustration as the problem, not the symptom. And you had talked about trauma. And I had a lot of trauma from growing up, stuff with parents and all that stuff as a kid. Nothing, extreme, but more of the emotional concussions that you talk about in your work. And I had done a lot of work on those things, but I had never really let them go or work through them. I had just kind of quieted them. So I decided to do the TIPP program, and I came down to Florida, and it was amazing. I remember going into the program and understanding the science of it, which was really, really beautiful, because from a cognitive perspective, I understood what was about to happen, or what had happened and what was about to happen. But the process was so gentle, so simple. And since that, it's been, at the time of this recording, going on, 4 months since I was down there, something like that. I have not had one single bit of anxiety, worry, sleepless nights, stress, overwhelm, any of that stuff. And what's interesting is there's more things that have come up in business since before. I am just at this whole new level of possibility and productivity and output and happiness. And I have this ability now where when I'm in my office recording this, when I leave this office, I get to go be dad. I get to go play. I get to go be an amazing husband. And I no longer have to negotiate with my mind. It's one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. And so I just want to shout this from the rooftops. It's been just a really, really beautiful process.
I love it. And just getting to meet you, I can see how genuine you are and how you really care about the people you work with. And you've been sending some of them, to see us because you really want to see them perform at their highest level. And this is a tool to help you also get the most out of the people that you're working with. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And I've seen from them too, the people that have come to see you from our client group, it's like they're just functioning so much higher. It's just the things that it was like they were operating in a fog before. Now the fog is completely gone, so they can just see totally clearly. It's been really cool.
It's really amazing. And the whole idea is it's so simple. Where people think they've been struggling their whole lives. The NBC Today Show did a segment on this, and the reporter went through the program, and that's what she said. She goes, I've been in therapy for a long time. She says, I still can't wrap my head around how you got rid of my anxiety that fast. But like I said at the event where you first saw me, as I talked about anxiety as a symptom, think of it as the email that keeps coming into your inbox, but you don't answer the email. You ignore the email or you block it. And so the anxiety is not going to go away until you answer what the mind has been trying to get done. And that's coming from these error messages from trauma that keep showing up in the present. And as we talk about, and I'm sure when you work with everybody, you say the key to success and happiness in your life and in your business is to be present and be in the moment. But we do all these things to try to do that, but that's not naturally how our minds and brains work. And that's why I spend so much time on the science. If you understood the science of it, you'll see why it's not easy to do that. But you can get temporary relief by the meditation, the yoga, the exercise, things like that, and the breathing. But the email's still coming in. So if you don't ever get to the source and the code that's being built, you don't ever answer the question. The example of it's like your bank is sending you an email telling you that there may be suspicious activity on your account, but there isn't. But as long as your mind still thinks there is, it's going to keep bringing it to your attention. It wants an answer to it, and you just can't ignore it because it won't go away.
It's like if you're hiking and you see a rattlesnake and then years later you open up the closet and see a rope coiled in the corner, your body thinks it's a rattlesnake even though it's not. I think one of the things you said is that it's your body or your nervous system is calling you to action for something that happened 30 years ago. And it's not even possible to act on that anymore. It's just an error message. The simplicity of that is so groundbreaking because you think about traditional therapy, right? Where you go and talk about a problem. I've always had so much resistance, no judgment if people have taken that approach, but resistance for doing it myself because I have found that whenever I've talked about problems, I might have like a catharsis, like a little bit of release emotionally, but it comes back up and it feels like I haven't really gotten to heal anything. I just kind of talked about it and brought it back up again. And so this is almost like you talk about trauma like a memory problem, which I think is really, really powerful. And it's almost like, I'll give you an example. Someone in my life would call me on the phone, and just seeing that person's name on the phone, my shoulders would tense up, my heart would race faster. They did nothing wrong. They call me because they love me and they care about me. It was almost like I didn't know what was happening. But ever since the TIPP experience, I've noticed that all those things of the past that happened that activated my nervous system.
I love it. You got that.
I said activated. Right. That activated my nervous system. It's almost like they're just objective memories like what I had for dinner last night. There's no emotional charge to them anymore. And I'm just noticed that relationship, the one that caused me the most pain in my life, that relationship is now becoming even more beautiful and healing and coming together and seeing the innocence in that person and having compassion for that person. And it's just been really cool. So I'm just shouting this from the rooftops because it's helped me so much.
And we appreciate it. We love working with you. And I think we got a great opportunity to just continue to serve each other and help each others and what you're doing as well and what we're doing. But, it's a good example. I had a lady who was actually very early on when I was developing the program, and she told me about that she had such bad anxiety. It was really bad. She goes, and her mother raised her as a single mom because the father walked out and left them. So she says there were times that they were homeless. They lived in the car, her and her sister and her mom. So it was a really pretty rough time. But her mother was pretty bitter and angry about it. So really almost took it out on the two girls. But not, I don't think intentionally. She wasn't trying to hurt them, but she was pretty upset about the way her life had gone. So she's now, this woman that's talking to me is an adult. And she said just what you said. When I see my mom call coming in, my anxiety goes through the roof. She says, I'm so afraid to pick it up because I know it's going to be, talking about everything. And so what she didn't realize is why that was happening. It wasn't the call itself. It was all the old pain that she had dealt with before kept running in and flooding in. And her mind was trying to get it to be different. And it can't make it different, but her mind doesn't know that. So then it's an overload of information coming into the system, which activates the nervous system on a very high level. So anyway, she goes through the program and she just said it was life, like you said, life changing. Her relationship with her mother had definitely healed, and she was able to do a lot more with her mother. She says even her father, who sort of came back into her life a little bit, she goes, I sort of realized he was a terrible father, but he's a really good grandfather. And so that from that side, that relationship was okay. But what was really interesting is she said to me, she called me up one day and she says, I want to thank you again for what you did for me. And I said, oh, that's great. She goes, well, I want to let you know. She says, I just sat with my mother and she told me that she's been diagnosed with cancer. And so she said, so I told her, I don't want you on your own. Come and live with me. Now she says, Dr. Wood, there's no way ever I would have thought that was possible to do. And even her sister said, I don't know how you're going to do that. And so she says, but I had repaired the relationship. And so she says, I'm just so happy that I can actually do that and be there for her. And she did. So she had her mother move in. Her sister was absolutely like, there's not a chance I would do that. I just couldn't do it. But her sister wouldn't go through the program. So anyway, a year later, I get a call from her again. And she says, again, I just want to thank you for what you did and how you helped me. And I said, absolutely thrilled that you were able to do that. She says, I just want to let you know my mother passed away this morning. And she says, and the reason I'm so thankful is I got to spend a year with her. And she says, and I couldn't have done that had you not helped me with that program. She says, so I'm sad my mother died, but I'm also very grateful that you gave me the year with her.
Wow. That's amazing. That's generational change.
Yep. Yep.
It's wow, that's so powerful.
She got to spend some time with her daughter, and unfortunately the sister just never got there, just didn't want to do it, and that was her choice. But it's so powerful when you realize the mind and body are designed to heal, and so she just couldn't heal, not because she didn't want to. The conscious logical mind is saying, well, this makes sense, I'm going to go and do this and this. But the old trauma keeps running in the background, keeps disrupting the nervous system, and the mind doesn't want to make change when it feels threatened. So the story I usually tell is if you're being chased by a lion, you're not going to get much maintenance done.
Yeah.
Because the system's right in survival mode. So you could run on jagged rocks and bare feet and not feel the pain because your mind's prioritizing survival over pain messages. And so that's really what happens. And then that's why people keep getting sicker, is because they're pretty much in fight or flight state most of the time. And that's generally coming from trauma. The current situation, right? And this is what traditional therapy is okay with, is helping people in maybe a current relationship issue, a marriage or a boss or, career change and stuff like that, current stuff they're really good at. They don't really understand trauma. They don't understand what trauma is doing. And so as an example, I had a lady and she's going to come in to do the program, but she really wanted to try to get off her medication. And so I talked to her yesterday and she said to me, my therapist is telling me that I have bipolar. And because I have bipolar, I will never, ever not have bipolar. So I just can't get off the medication. And I said, really? Very interesting. And I said, have you ever asked her what causes bipolar? And she says, well, yes. She says, they don't know. And I said, so they don't know what causes it, but they can tell you that it never ends. So if they don't know what causes it, they certainly can't tell you how to fix it, right?
Wow. That's
And
very true.
so, yeah, it's pretty interesting. So she's now figured she has this label she can't get out of. And I said, what they really don't understand is trauma is at the root cause of that. It's just a response. It's a symptom. Bipolar is a symptom. Anxiety is a symptom. That's the emotion. That's the feeling, the sensation that your mind creates to get you into some form of an action. Very different way of looking at it.
What I teach my students is that most of success is counterintuitive, right? The more you, let's use the example of crave certainty, the more uncertain you feel. The more you expect your partner to act a certain way instead of giving love, the less love you feel, right? It's counterintuitive in that way. And it's also counterintuitive in the sense that the people that don't work on this stuff and heal this stuff, it might be because there's a perception they'll have to relive it. I'm not sure, but the counterintuitiveness of it is of facing it and healing from it. That's what's actually going to allow me to have freedom. Have you heard of Michael Singer's work?
Yes. Yeah, I heard of it.
One of the things that I really appreciated about, he has a metaphor in his book, The Untethered Soul, that I think is really profound. You mentioned the one woman's sister wouldn't come and do the program. There's people in my life that I have recommended this to that are like, no. And there's a lot of ego behind it. And the metaphor that Michael Singer talks about is how if you're walking through the woods and you get hit by like a thorn bush and there's a thorn in your arm, well, common sense would say pull out the thorn.
Right.
But the thorn is perceived as painful to take out. And so what people do is they'll build up a contraption around the thorn just to make sure the thorn never gets hit. And then they'll say like, well, the thorn doesn't control my life anymore. It's not in charge of me. It doesn't get hit anymore. Yet the thorn controls your entire life because everything you do is about not hitting the thorn. And so I've noticed that in these people in my life that I know could benefit from this, that are in avoidance, there's a really interesting phenomenon going on where they'll say, I'm not bugged by the thorn anymore, it doesn't control me, yet the thorn is the thing they talk about the most or bring up the most. And it's just a sign, hey, let's heal this. Why do you think, I'm curious, like, if you have an opinion on why people won't do the program, is it perceived that they might perceive it as painful? Is it?
Yeah, because probably their experience has been pain, trying to deal with it. So as soon as they start talking about it, they feel the pain. So they'd rather not feel the pain. So they would rather try to ignore it, but they actually can't ignore it. The mind and body are dealing with it, whether they think it is or not. So it's going to show up in physical symptoms, where if you don't address the problem, then you're going to have high inflammation, low immunity. Now you're going to start getting sick. You're going to start having, viruses. You're susceptible to all of these different things. So it'll show up somewhere in your life if you don't deal with it. So you can't really ignore it. Yeah. But people will try, or they'll come up with coping mechanisms like addiction. And so then they'll start numbing it and they'll say, that's the only thing that works. I found in all this research that I did, I kept finding these really unique research stuff that people hadn't heard about before and talking about pain. So I don't know if I shared this with you, but I found an article from a World War II veteran who was a German sniper.
Yeah.
I don't know how I found this, right? But I have the article. But in the article, what he talked about, he says, when we fought against the Russians, he says the Russians, now he's a German sniper. He said, when we fought against the Russians, they didn't have a lot of weapons, but they had a lot of people. And it was funny because when I was 16, I met a guy. I was working part-time at Sears warehouse, unloading trucks after school. And this guy was a German soldier from World War II. And he had told me how he ended up in a hospital in World War II because the Russians just kept charging, even though they didn't have any weapons. And he said, they just overran us in the bunkers. And he says, I got knocked out and I ended up in a hospital somewhere. And so he was telling me that. And then I find this article that sort of confirmed this is what the only way the Russians could defend themselves was to overwhelm and with the numbers, and the Germans couldn't shoot them all. And so, but then the sniper said, he says, the way he came up to fix that problem was, he says, I stopped killing them. He says, I started shooting them in the stomach. He says, now all these Russians are lying on the ground screaming in pain. That was a bigger deterrent for the next Russian running out to charge.
Wow.
They would rather die than be in that pain.
Yeah. That's
Isn't that amazing?
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing.
Tells you so much about the psychology of the mind. That fear of being in pain was far greater than the fear of death. Because if you died, there's no pain. Lying and screaming in that pain was very, very enlightening and showing what people will do to be out of pain. And then that's why I'm doing a lot of work with addiction, because I believe that the addiction model has to change. We have to stop shaming and guilting these people because they've got pain. Trauma creates the pain. Addiction is also the symptom. It's not the problem. But if you only attack the symptom, you never fix the problem. So what do they do with addiction? The whole model in addiction is we're going to make you feel so bad about what you've done, right? We're going to shame you that you're going to feel so bad and you're going to avoid it. The problem with that is here's how the mind works. Whatever you go out of your way to avoid becomes much more attractive.
Yeah.
And so because the mind's like, why am I avoiding that? Like, it looks pretty good to me from over here. And so it brings more attention to it. So the way to really address it is to get to the root cause, which is what created the pain, which was the trauma. And then what they did is then the only way they could stop that pain was to take a drink or a drug, and that numbed it. So now they didn't feel the pain. The same way if you went into an ER with a broken leg and they shot you up with morphine, you wouldn't feel the pain. You could go home. You could probably walk right out of the hospital, but your leg's still broken. And then the next day you're going to go, well, I got to go back there again because I need more of that needle. And that's how they get stuck. And then what happens is the brain's a computer, so it codes. So then it builds up a code on what do we do with this pain? We take that drink, we take that drug, and that solves my problem. So the resource that they found is actually the solution. And then you turn around and say, you should be ashamed of yourself. You know what you're doing to your family. Every time you pick that up, you're hurting yourself or your family. Well, what's the alternative? Do you have another solution for me? No, we just want you to white knuckle this and fight it for the rest of your life. I can't think of anything more discouraging. Your whole business is built around helping people with success. How many people would you have, right, that you would be able to help when you said, you're going to work really, really hard, but chances are you're not going to be successful?
There's no way.
But I want you to really work hard, right, and fight it every day with me. And, I'm going to be honest with you, you're not going to succeed, but boy, you're going to work hard, right? That wouldn't work. You couldn't encourage anybody to want to do that. And that's what happens with addiction. And that's why they fall back, because as soon as they don't get that relief that they were going for, boom, they're right back to, well, I know what did work and I'm going right back to that unless somebody gives me a better solution. And that's what we're doing. We're giving them a better solution. We're taking away the shame and guilt. We're resetting the trauma, and then we're giving them the tools to rebuild new codes.
It's so powerful because I think one of the biggest problems that I see is there's a social isolation with people that are dealing with addiction where they feel that they're completely alone and being judged consistently, when one thing that I really respect about your work is you're saying, no, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you as a person. It's just a code. That's all it is. And you have found a successful strategy to numb pain. And when we bring the human and innocence back to everybody that's dealing with any sort of challenge, it creates an environment where people feel safer to want to change and to shift things. And so I think it's really beautiful because everything else that I see is just, you're broken. You should be ashamed of yourself for doing this. And that's not going to do anything. Yeah.
And the mind is so powerful. The subconscious mind, right, operates in the present. So when does it want the pain to stop? Now. It doesn't understand time. So the subconscious mind, because it doesn't understand time, can't see a consequence to an action. You have to be able to understand time in order to understand the consequence. So if the subconscious mind operates now, it has no idea that what it's doing is going to have a consequence to it. It's the solution to the problem now. It's only our conscious mind, our logical, reasonable part of our mind that can say, this is bad. Yeah. This is going to end up in some problem for me. But who's in charge of survival?
Subconscious.
And it runs the show. And so we can do all we want to try to tell them that this shouldn't be done and use logic and reason, but this isn't a logical, reasonable problem. If it was, there'd never be an addict because we could all fight it logically. Makes perfect sense, right? All I have to do is say to somebody, you know what that's doing to you, right? You're right, I'm going to stop that. They could probably stop it. But it's not even about willpower, because that's the one thing that they talk about is you need to have willpower. right? Willpower is not the problem, right? A lot of these guys, a lot of people who I'm sure you know people. I know some people who are highly successful addicts, right? And they're running businesses and they're successful because I had one guy recently come in and he was running a successful business, spending 6 to 8 hours a day seeking and using a drug and still running his business. That's discipline and willpower.
Yeah.
That wasn't his problem. His problem was he got stuck. The pain was still running and he ran a code. So that's why I never liked the word willpower in this situation. Do you remember the experiment they did in the 70s, the marshmallow test?
Mm-mm.
Did you ever hear about that?
Mm-mm.
It's a famous experiment, and people have used it for years about children. And what they did is they took these children, and it was sort of a social experiment. And the children were sat in a room with a moderator, and the moderator said, I can give you one marshmallow and you can eat it now. Or if you wait 15 minutes, you can have two marshmallows. And they would leave the marshmallow, right, and leave the room to see what the kids would do. And so the idea is they were going to study these kids over the next 25 years. Who are the kids that eat the marshmallow now and who are the kids that wait? And so the whole purpose of the experiment was to show the kids that waited to get the two marshmallows tended to have more success in life. And so that became a very famous experiment on you have to teach your children to have that willpower in order not to take that extra marshmallow. That's going to be some sort of a barometer on their success going forward. They redid the experiments a number of years ago, like back in, I think, 2015, and they realized it had nothing to do with willpower. What it had to do was their circumstances in their world. So if you had a child who was constantly never got anything, right? Or broken promises. Parents would say, oh, we'll do that tomorrow, or if you're really good, you'll get this, and then don't deliver because maybe financially they can't afford it. So the parent's trying to do the right thing, or you get a parent that's just, not nice. But they said it had nothing to do with their willpower. It had to do with, did they really think they were ever going to get a second marshmallow? I may as well take what I've got now because I've constantly been disappointed. That happens in every kind of a home, not just in the kids that are, not well off. And so it changed the whole experiment. And so I relate that to addiction as well. Addiction's the same thing. It's not about willpower, it's their circumstances. Where are they in? And so if they don't have any support and things have not worked out for them, they're going to go right to the drugs or alcohol. They don't have anything else. So the key is to build the support around them at the same time. So one of the things that we're really focusing on as well is to make sure that once they go back home, right, they also have the support there that's sort of encouraging. Because we've had situations where somebody's going through the program. We had one lady who came in, she was doing so well. And then she would come in the morning and she was really down and dejected. And we say, like, what's going on? She goes, well, I sat and I talked with my mom and my sister last night, and they said, I'm sure you're just going to go right back to the same old behavior. You've done it so many times. Just beat her up every night. We're building her up all day. They're beating her up all night, saying, well, we'll see, and, chances are, and then saying, so what are you doing? They're putting you in this, they're putting you in the hyperbaric. What's that do? Right? Critical of everything we did. And so it's very tough. And I see why, though, because somebody who's in addiction is stealing from them, lying to them. So the family becomes very bitter and very angry, and they've been disappointed because sometimes they get out of addiction for a little while and they're all hopeful things are going to change. And then they go right back and all of a sudden they're stealing from them again and getting high. And so they've been disillusioned. But anybody who's going through the program, we always make sure you're getting the support at home, right? Or don't go home, find another way because they're going to try to bring you down. And you see it all the time.
And it's the same shame and guilt that the current system to help with addiction is built on, which makes no sense. Hey, we're going to punish you and somehow think that that's going to change things. And it's simply not.
So tell me about what you do. So somebody comes to see you, and I encourage anybody who's looking to have someone like Brad who can coach you and take you through this. Tell me what you do and how you're helping them.
We do ice pick lobotomies mostly. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, good. Good. That'll work. I just took it in first and then I went, what?
Nice little pattern interrupt for everyone here. No, so what we really do is we help people operate at the next level by identifying what are the conditioned belief systems, patterns, emotional frequencies that you've been living in that are getting in the way of the next level of success that you really deserve. And we essentially recondition and focus on what do we need to believe to move in the right direction. I think you mentioned that subconscious is running the show, right? And that's very similar to what we teach as well, how our entire life is controlled by invisible forces, right? If you think about gravity, too much of it, you're crushed, too little of it, you float away. You think about love. Wars have been started over love. It's an invisible force. Beliefs are also an invisible force, and they tend to reinforce themselves. For example, if I have a belief that says money is hard to make, let's just use that as an example, right? That's something that I used to believe for a very long time. It's what I saw growing up consistently. It was kind of conditioned into me, just call it osmosis. And that belief limits the potential that you tap into in creating money. And from a limited potential, you take a limited action. You don't take different actions. You take the same action or similar action what you've done. You also surround yourself with people that have a similar story so that it's called confirmation bias, so that you're right. So the results that you get is limited resources. You're not going to have much money coming into your account. And when you have limited money coming into your account, it reinforces the belief that money is hard to make. Versus if you have a belief that says success is my birthright, higher level of potential, different, more calculated risk actions, surround yourself with higher performers, you get better results. It reinforces the belief that success is my birthright. And so really what we do is after the foundation, which I believe that your program provides, which is the foundation of shifting all the things that have in the past that have basically prevented people from operating the next level, we then go into their world and say, okay, what we need to believe, value, what does our productivity need to look like? What does our energy and emotions need to be to live this life that we really want? I've noticed there's kind of three paradigms that people operate through. The first, I've nicknamed it the worried perfectionist. And this person operates from what I call a have, do, be psychology, right? They'll say, once my circumstances are different, once I have more money, once I have a better relationship, once I am at this certain weight, whatever it is, then I'll do. Then I'll invest in the coach. Then I'll start the business. Then I'll do whatever so I can be successful, happy, fulfilled, whatever it is. That's the first paradigm. The second one is what I call the stressed achiever. And this is where I used to operate. And that is they operate from a do have be psychology. I need to always be doing all the time, because if I do enough, then I'll have something. And once I have that thing, that makes me qualified to be successful, happy, fulfilled, whatever it is. If you notice those first two paradigms, the be is at the end. But high performers, they flip it and they operate from a be, do, have psychology. What do I want to have long term? What's the life I want to live? Okay, great results, fantastic. Let's say it's a 6 or 7 figure income. It's, the nice house and the beautiful relationships and amazing kids, all these healthy body, all these things. Awesome. What would I be doing if I already had that? I'd be taking a different action. Therefore, who do I need to be now? What are the beliefs, values, identities, emotions that I need to live in now so that I would automatically take that action as a byproduct and therefore create the results and have the goals and dreams that I'm looking for? And so what we do is we take a look at where people are at and we help them, call it, install the beliefs, values, identities, and emotional states that will yield the results that they're really after. If we don't, and this is where I see a lot of people struggle, I have a belief that says without a compelling vision of the future, you are forced to focus on the problems of the past and present. And so I think that a lot of people, they'll want and aspire to have a different life, but the different life that they aspire to go after is conditioned by their past. And so the goals that they say they want aren't actually what they want. It's just a little bit better than now. And so we help people identify what's a really compelling vision that you're after. What does your heart really want? So we get them into the right state to be able to identify that. Then we identify what are the beliefs, values, identities, emotions getting in the way of that. We shift that. And then we create an action plan to go actually after the most important things to yield those results. Most people, when they take action towards a goal, they're taking the safe actions that are not actually yielding results, and they mistake movement for achievement, right? Yeah. They'll organize their office instead of actually send the important email or prospecting message or whatever it is. So then we show how to actually create the actual results thereafter while also being fulfilled along the way. And so I like to view it as a good metaphor that I use in my work is kind of like a road trip. One of my favorite things to do is to go hiking. And I'm the crazy guy that climbs the mountains and does the Grand Canyon rim to rim in a day.
Go off.
I'm that guy. So I remember I was we were on a road trip with my buddies a couple of years back. Driving from the Grand Canyon, we had just backpacked it rim to rim in a single day. And we were now about to go to Yosemite and climb Half Dome at Yosemite.
Wow.
And just doing crazy stuff. And I just love it. I love that stuff. And I was in the car with my buddy Jim, and he said something really interesting that gave me a download about our work. He said, Brad, these road trips are a lot like success. If you are not excited about where you're driving to, you're not going to want to drive across the country to get there. And I had this incredible download of what I call success GPS. And it's this metaphor of if you sit down and you're going on a road trip, Google Maps needs two things, right? You need your destination. You need to know where you are right now. Well, I live in Western Illinois. There's corn out my front door and a lake in my backyard, right? I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I'm amazed we have great internet here. And so if I want to, let's say Yosemite National Park is where I really want to go. That's my dream. It's like you're in Jurassic Park and Avatar at the same time. It's amazing. And I want to drive there to go hiking in this national park. But I set my GPS pin based on the current amount of gas I have in the tank. That's 379 miles away in a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. No offense to Iowa, but I already got corn out my front door. So I need a compelling destination of where I actually want to drive to. I also need to know where I am right now. Most of the time when people are in their existing circumstances, they create stories that make it worse than it is. So if I'm plotting a course from Western Illinois to Yosemite, but I am telling my GPS I'm in a worse off spot from beliefs and values and all those things that we had talked about, well, that's like telling GPS I'm back in Buffalo, New York. And so GPS will plot a course from Buffalo to Yosemite, and it will say turn left on Johnson Street, but there's no Johnson Street. So I'm just going to run around aimlessly and go back to everything that I've known before. And so we need to make sure those are aligned. And if we don't, then the whole road trip is off. I think what a lot of people don't see is that going on this journey is the most beautiful part of success, right? Because there are times when it's fast, times when it's slow, times when it's raining, times when it's uphill, downhill, construction zones, and all of those things, how you show up to them will determine your experience of the road trip, including who's in the car with you. And so, I just paraphrased a 3-hour training into 3 minutes, but the whole point is that that's really what we help people with. We help people identify the GPS pin they actually want to go to, identify where they actually are, and we remove all the garbage that's getting in the way of them actually going there.
I love it. That's a great way. That's a great summary, because that's what people don't know. They just start walking, thinking they'll eventually get there, and they're walking in the wrong direction. And then they're exhausted when they find out they got to go back, right? Yeah. They got to retrace their steps. And that's why, again, this is why I love that we're teaming up, because a lot of people don't realize where those beliefs came. They came in from generally experiences earlier in their life that they've got to reset. And if they don't reset them, it's very difficult to override a belief. And there's a famous experiment. So they took a cage and they put monkeys in the cage. And then they put a banana at the top of the cage. And so one of the monkeys starts climbing up to get the banana. And as the monkey's climbing up, they take a hose and they spray the other monkeys. They just start splashing them full of water. So the monkey that got the banana comes down and they're not happy because they got sprayed, and they keep doing it, right? So what happens is that monkey, nobody wants to go up to get it because they've been trained that you get hurt if somebody gets a banana. So then they start replacing the monkeys, right, one by one, and put in a monkey who doesn't know you get wet. And so he sees the banana, but the other monkeys will stop him from going up. And then they just eventually take all the monkeys out that ever got sprayed, and they're all new monkeys that never got sprayed, but nobody will let a monkey go up to get the banana.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And they don't know why. Right? It's just something about that banana that they've seen and conditioned that believes that the banana has something to do with getting hurt.
This is like we talked about, it's very, very hard to recondition a belief if we don't heal kind of what's behind it. And it's why I'm so fascinated with understanding and learning what you really do, because the level of performance that becomes activated, if that is healed, it is insane. If I take a look at some of the belief work that we do, without realizing it, a lot of it is trauma related, just without the science. And it's It's more of the emotional side of forgiveness and, compassion and those type of things. But we bring the science and the brain reboot into this. Holy cow.
Yeah. Totally changes it because
Yeah.
people just don't know why, but it's subconscious. So that's why they don't know why. So people will say to me, I think we talked about this, is people will say to me, I sabotage myself. Every time I'm going to be successful, I go and do something, I sabotage myself. And as you know what I
No.
say, it's impossible. You can't sabotage yourself. People go, but I do it. And I say, well, explain to me what you did. And then they'll tell me, well, I'm going along and everything's going really well. And then all of a sudden I go and do something stupid. And, I let that go and I go in another direction. Why did your mind do that? Because it had a belief that if I continue on this path, success may mean pain. And so they're on a good path for success, but they've seen success in other ways, whether it's a parent or whatever, turn to stress or turn to something, and their mind's going to protect them. It's not hurting them, it's protecting them. Your mind can't sabotage you.
So interesting. And it's counterintuitive, like most of success, right? You've heard so many people say I sabotage when really it's not sabotage, it's just keeping you safe.
Protection.
Yeah.
From the danger. I use a funny way to explain it is I say you take a young guy in high school, he's at a school dance, and there's a really pretty girl across the room. He wants to go up and ask her to dance. He's trying to get up the nerve. And so he finally gets up the nerve and he starts walking over and his heart's pounding in his chest. And then he sees his friend Bobby over on the other side, on another corner. And he goes, I should go talk to Bobby first. Right? Why did he go over and talk to Bobby as opposed to continuing to go talk to the girl? Because she's the lion that could rip his throat out. And then he has to walk back and everybody's laughing at him, knows he just got shot down. But if he goes over and talks to Bobby, nobody ever knows that he was going to go talk to that girl. So did his mind sabotage him or protect him from what it felt like? Maybe he's gotten turned down. Maybe he's gotten shot down before. And that girl's probably going, oh my gosh, he's on his way over. I'm so excited. And then where's he going? He's going over to talk to Bobby. Oh my gosh, I thought he was coming over to ask me to dance. All those fears build up, right? But you just don't know what the other people are thinking. You don't know why they do what they do, but it's generally coming in from fear of being hurt or being shamed or something. And that just comes in from older experiences that are running subconsciously in the background that you call sabotage.
So interesting. So interesting.
Well, this has been great. I know we're getting to the end here. So I appreciate you spending the time and sharing. There's so many great things. I see why people working with you are getting success. So if somebody wants to work with you, get together, meet you or whatever, where do they go? How do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really two ways that would connect you fastest. The first is just through our social media on our Instagram. That's where I'm sharing tips and tricks and all that stuff consistently. That's just at Brad Bizjack, one word, on Instagram. You'll be able to find me there. If you are interested in starting to identify what are some of these beliefs and value conflicts going on behind the scenes, I've had the privilege of working with now 70,000 people and over 70,000 people. And I've recognized a couple of patterns in doing that, one or two. And I've recognized some belief patterns that really are getting in people's way that they don't really see are going on. And so I created a free assessment to help you identify what I call your unique success archetype. Really what that is a fancy way of saying, what are the beliefs and values and identities running the show for you right now? And so I call it What's Your Unique Success Archetype? You can just find that at quizzes.bradbizjack.com. Again, that's quizzes.bradbizjack.com. And that's a place where if you really want to go a little bit deeper on that work, we can help you there. It's free. It takes 60 seconds. And yeah.
So what's your avatar? Who's the person that should be coming to see you?
Yeah, the person that I know I can serve the most. And it's so interesting because I think in this space, it's very hard to say everyone, but really, if you're the person that knows in their heart that you're meant for so much more out of life, you just have this feeling, this pull to create something more, to live with more fulfillment, more success, but something's getting in your way and you can't tell what it is, or you might have these sensations of, I should be further along than I am right now, or maybe I'll be happy when that thing happens, or I don't have the confidence, or you're consistently living in procrastination or perfectionism. And just not performing at the level that you really know you're meant to, and you know that there's another level in you, and you know that you're made for greatness, not only achieving a lot, but really living a beautiful, fulfilling life at the same time. That's what we specialize in helping people to do. This is not for you if you're someone that just wants to complain about problems all day. This is something where if you want to go to work on growth and improving yourself and really living a life on your terms, that's what we can help you with.
So you mean they just don't come in, hand you their problems, and you fix them?
That is true.
Okay. Very good. Well, what a pleasure having you on. I've gotten to know you really well over the past period of time, and I enjoy our friendship, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wood. I really appreciate you as well. It's a privilege to be here and serve your audience, and I look forward to the years of friendship to come.
Sounds great. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of You Must Be Out of Your Mind. And there it is.